Hi, Rahkim. I'm so excited to have you on the show finally.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Oh my gosh, I've been following you for a little while before we became connected, and then then later in my Facebook group. I love what you're doing. I love who you're doing it for. So, to tell the folks what you do in the financial space.
I do a lot actually, but right now I'm really focusing on the coaching aspect of what I'm doing. So I realize that personal finance is personal, of course, and that a lot of people are looking, especially now with the global pandemic, a lot of people are looking for ways to improve their finances or improve their mindset as it relates to finances. And there's a lot of content out there related to financial literacy. So I focus specifically on financial empowerment. But beyond that, I've done a TED Talk on financial empowerment. I wrote a book. I write for large publications. I have a nonprofit that focuses on ending homelessness, and we use financial education as one of our programs. And just all around, really passionate about educating people on personal finance best practices and just sharing my experiences.
Yeah. I love how you said personal finance is that personal. And I just said that on a session I did earlier today. And the reason why I say it to many, and I want to hear your perspective, is even if I share with them, even if you work at the same job, make the same amount of money, your expenses may be different, or your goals or your why. So you can't do your money like someone else. You can't save the same amount. You can't spend the same amount, because what you have to do in your life from an expense standpoint, or what you have to save for later in the future, may be different. So is that the same reason why you say personal is just that, personal finance?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to compare their financial circumstances and behaviors to other people. And with finance becoming less a taboo topic these days and more people engaging around what they do, whether it is subscribing to like the Dave Ramsey camp around no credit,
Mhm.
or they like Kiyosaki or Cardone's kind of like leverage, like use credit to build wealth. There's no one answer. And more specifically, because I've worked in financial services, and I've sat with financial advisors who did a really good job, and I've sat with financial advisors who didn't do quite a good job, where those advisors who didn't do a good job would look at my demographic, right? Like single male at this age, making this much money, this is the retirement product that I think that you should go into with the amount of money that I think that you should put into it. And that's not being sensitive to a variety of other variables that either could come up or are currently existing as it relates to what my peers look like. And so we're not taking into account what debt looks like. We're not taking into account what obligations I might have, whether or not I'm a homeowner, how many homes I own, what liability looks like. And so, and when you come at advising from that perspective, I think you're setting your client up to fail, because they're thinking that they have to put the same amount all the time, and they're going to hit this magic number by the time they retire, and those things can change.
Yeah, exactly right. So you dropped a couple of names there. I want to make sure as you go on other podcasts, I want you to say, or like Patrina Dixon, who say pay yourself first, or it's my money. So make sure you add that to your list of name drops.
I definitely will.
So as I listen to you and now watch you, personal finance is something that to your point, used to be taboo. And I know you and I look like one another in the sense of the color of our skin. And I know what that means for how often finances are talked in our households, or the fact that it is not. Talk to me about how you got interested. Like, how was your upbringing as it pertains to money, and then why you feel it your mission to help others do exactly what you just said. Understand that there isn't just one path to reach a number. There's other things that go into it, and they need to be more cognizant of everything. So talk to us how you got there.
Yeah, definitely. So I did a TED Talk in December of 2019, And I talk about how my parents were young parents. They were teenagers when I was born. And so, again, finances weren't discussed at length in the household. And then there was a point in time when my parents separated. And so I became very aware of the household finances. My mom got Section 8, we had food stamps. And so there's a variety of circumstances relating to the household finances that really kind of like shocked me into a way of or a mode of thinking, right? I talk about how I aspired to be poor because I saw my mom had food stamps, my mom had Section 8, and I thought that when I became of age, that was the logical progression, that I would go out and do those same things. And that was never a conversation that was had. My mom never encouraged that. My dad never encouraged that. But it was just observation. And so I
Yeah.
think because we don't have those conversations and we are observing, like that's a reality for a lot of us, and we are observing that behavior, that we want to replicate that behavior. I described that as, my mom was surviving and I wanted to survive.
Yes.
So I eventually ended up by accident falling into banking. I started as a part-time teller at 21 years old. And as I grew within the company and I grew within just the industry, I had instances where I had to interact with customers, customer facing, and learn about their financial situations, learn how to sell to them, learn how to talk to them about, different products, whether it be credit products, retirement products, lending products. Do they have a checking account? How many do they have? Why? Business accounts, if they're a small business. And there's just a lot that came by osmosis in terms of understanding how people manage their finances, but also a desire was piqued in me to learn more. So I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which really kind of gave me my start. I think it gives a lot of people their start. And the book changed my viewpoint on what it means to be a business owner versus an employee. How to create systems, how to invest, looking at the world from the perspective of an investor. And I said, you know what, like mind blown at this point. I want to go out and I want to duplicate this. Like I want to be the rich dad. So I just started consuming as much as I could within that space. And I learned that at one point there was kind of like a divide, right? There's people who will go down, like I said, the Dave Ramsey camp, and they're like, no credit, like pay off your mortgage as quickly as possible, take out a term life insurance policy, and invest aggressively in retirement. And then you have people like Kiyosaki or Grant Cardone
Or
who
Patricia
are,
Dixon.
or who and I think what I think is so important, and I'll circle back to that, about the work that we do is the fact that when you put a face to a name to a approach, right, where I have a very hybrid approach when it comes to looking at personal finance, where I can see the value in what Dave Ramsey talks about and how that might be good for somebody on a repairing path. But I really like what Cardone and Kiyosaki talk about with a leverage perspective, and you need to have a good credit. You need to take advantage of that credit, especially when you're controlling assets like real estate. And so when we go out there, right, our name, our faces, and we're talking about these things, I can say, well, I agree with Dave Ramsey up until this point, or I agree with Kiyosaki up until this point. And then we can have our own internal like representation or debates around, because my view on personal finance is going to incorporate culture. It's going to incorporate experience.
Right.
It's going to incorporate the barriers that we face as a people in terms of our own mindset and in terms of just what structural inequalities look like and how to navigate those barriers. And so I think we have a very unique niche as well when it comes to the personal finance space, because we're speaking to an audience that looks like us, whose experiences are relative to our experiences.
That's right. And I'm gonna poke at this a little bit with you. And if I noticed, I know you noticed because you're saying it, when you use the references of who you listen to, who you follow, who you read, they aren't people that look like you, right? So I think
Absolutely.
it's important that people that look like us come from behind the works that we do. So when we write, make sure that they know who the author is. I know you write for several publications, like who is that author, not just the name at the bottom, but seeing really makes a difference. It actually played into why my picture is on the cover of my next book, because I want to ensure that it's not that people just know It's My Money. They know who is behind It's My Money and what that person looks like. So I think it's really important that people realize that there are more people that look like us, like a whole army full of people that look like us, that are personal finance experts or financial experts that are out here doing their thing. So that was really important for me, because no matter how much the information, because saving is saving, budgeting is budgeting, investing is investing, but the experience and the cultural aspect plays a huge part. And it
Yeah.
also plays a part in the trusting component as well. So that's what I find in what I do. So talk to us about, so you said you coach, you said you have a nonprofit, you told us how you got into it. What do you find are the well, if you find this, do you find that people are still resistant to learning what you have to share? Because you can deliver it, you can make it free through your nonprofit, or giving money to be able to bring those programs forward. Do you find people still resistant in trying to learn how to do what you're doing because they don't feel they have money to invest or money to save? Are you finding that as well?
Yes and no. I think people are resistant at the point that they realize that there is a dollar amount tied to that learning, right? So I think one of the most frequent, and you could probably relate to this, one of the most frequent guilt trips that I get, right, is like, you should be for the people. You should be sharing your knowledge freely. You learned, like, it's each one teach one. And that is a mantra that, I live by. Each one teach one, each one reach one, right? And but at the same time, when you're not assigning value to something, then nobody else is going to assign value to that thing. And the work that we do, especially when you're interacting with people and personalities and attitudes and mindsets, especially generational mindsets, is a tiring work.
Mhm.
I often, you know, tell people that I'm very much an introvert, and
Mhm.
I've had to learn how to become an extrovert in this space by honing the skills in public speaking, and going on podcasts and doing interviews and writing and sharing my perspective so that I can get the information out there. But the introvert nature in me makes it so that after I do a presentation, like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just so twice as drained as I would normally be, because I'm interacting with so many different people's energies. And it's exciting for me. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I love to do. But it's also, limitations in terms of being conscious of your body and your mind, and what that health looks like. So when you're dealing with that kind of resistance physically, and then you have to go and deal with somebody's attitude around not paying you, or not wanting to pay you, or not feeling like they should pay you, or that they should pay you at the price point that you're looking to get, it is a little bit of a challenge. And I think that's why it's so important that we diversify our product offerings too. Like, okay, maybe you can't afford one-on-one coaching, or you can't afford group coaching, but you can afford a $15 book. Well, go grab the book,
Yeah.
or go
Listen to
read a
the
few of
podcast
my
for
blog
free.
posts.
Yeah,
Right,
read the
exactly. So,
blog
like,
post. Exactly right.
have things out there where we're still giving information, we're providing value, but when you really want the hand holding and getting into, like, leveraging what is this skill set that I've cultivated over time, then yeah, you gotta pay.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I posted something yesterday that was a repost from somebody else who said, "You're not paying for the half hour of time; you're paying for the 10 years of knowledge that they've accumulated." And that is
Absolutely.
so true. I don't think people realize it from that perspective, but it's so true. So I find myself, when I work with certain clients, that it is more about the mind shift. I almost feel like I'm the psychologist as opposed to the finance coach, because it really is getting underneath why they're doing that. Like, why are they, spending more than what they have? Why are they eating out more than they are eating at home? And when you when it appears that is uncovered, then you can kind of get them to, okay, let me think about this thing differently. So do you like working, is your preference, or I'm not even sure if you do this, do you work with individuals one-on-one or only in a group setting?
I do one-on-one, and I do group.
Okay.
In terms of a preference, I think I think it depends on the day. um, I will say it's a different and maybe a more fulfilling experience for me working with somebody one-on-one, just because I think, first of all, their guard is going to be more down when it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be more vulnerable and willing to kind of talk about what their limitations are, right? Psychologically, I think we all wear the psychologist hat. We have
Yes.
to. But also, people are still reluctant to talk about their personal finances, right? Like how much money they make, how much debt they have, whether or not they have things on their credit, what their credit score is. Like it's like a badge of shame, right? If you don't have all the greens.
Yeah.
And so in a one-on-one setting, you take that shame out of the equation. Whereas in a group setting, I think people can relate to other people's experiences. And so there's definitely opportunity there to leverage the group to build each other up, while you kind of like guide the ship. So different levels of satisfaction depending on the individuals in that group or who you're dealing with one-on-one, but also depending on the day. Like if I have the energy to go back and forth, and you know sometimes you have to be firm and frank and just really direct, and sometimes you're like, okay, like I'll let you get a pass on that one. So there's a level of people skill that you have to have, and I think that's going to fluctuate based off of how you're feeling inside as well.
Yeah. And so how, so you have a book, I know you have more than one book, but you have a book, Financially Irresponsible. Why that title?
Yes.
What does that mean? Tell us why you chose that title and what does that mean to
So
you?
I actually worked with a consultant in writing this book, and we spent I don't know how many hours on coming up with a really attention grabbing cover design and title. And he asked me at the beginning of it, um, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish by writing this book? And I said, I want to be on TV. Like, I want to be on somebody's talk show. I want to be on the magazines. Like, and he said, okay, so you want something like, sensationalized in the media. You need something that's going to really get people talking and, controversial almost. And so we're coming up with all these different titles, and um, the topic of financial responsibility came up. And as we kind of like crafted down, Financially Irresponsible came, and I was like, oh man, that's it. As soon as I
That's
heard it, I
it,
was like,
right?
that's it.
That's it.
That's it. And it has a dual purpose in that a lot of the things that I talk about, the angle that I talk about, rather, personal finance in the book is from my experience.
Mm.
And so everything that happened in that book was from the time that I became conscious of money until the time up to 29. So I hadn't even uh, become 30 yet. And so most people, when they talk about their 30s, 40s, 50s, they talk about repairing the damage they did in their 20s financially. And so and so I talk about my experiences in my 20s financially, but some of the practices that I implement would be considered irresponsible by traditional or traditionalist perspective, right? Like I had, when I wrote the book, I think I talked about having like 8 or 9 credit cards.
Mm.
I feel like, that's not considered responsible. The average American has 2.5. So why so many credit cards? Or, what my savings practices were. Am I investing in my 401k? Am I not investing? Different things like that. And so, whereas those concepts would be considered financially irresponsible, it landed me where I was to talk about it from a position of authority. So the point of the text is to really challenge people in their views of what is considered responsible or what is considered a best practice financially, and forces them to take the reins of their personal finance. And like I said, understand that it's personal. Like what works for me at 27 may not fly for me at 30. And what worked for me at 21, I may not have been able to do at 27. So understanding that it's very fluid and that it can change and
Yes.
that it often does change is important.
Yes. And I, I can't stress enough the word personal. I interviewed somebody on the show, and I think this person said they had either 7 or 9 savings accounts. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, how do you manage
Yeah.
all that? So she was very intentional about why she made that happen. And then I really understood why she did that after she said it, after she explained. But when she first said it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, and I have more than one. I have several, but not that many savings only. So it's really interesting. And I think people I think oftentimes, like with a lot of things, people compare themselves to the next. Oh, if your colleague, you guys work together, or young ladies work together, you are the same age, you just have the same thing, you drive the same car. And it's really not that. And in no situation should you compare, and by far you shouldn't compare from a financial standpoint. It's one thing to aspire to have more money, have wealth, and understand the difference between the two. But it's another thing to compare your financial situation to somebody else just because you think they have the same thing that you have. So that's really important. So the other question I wanted to ask you, so you said your book, Financially Irresponsible, your goal was to get on TV. Did that happen for you? And was it based on the title?
It did not happen for me in a traditional sense, but I did get quite a buzz as it relates to media. And I don't know if it was necessarily the title or timing, but I mean, I wear Financially Irresponsible like a brand, right? So I think the biggest pop for me with the book was sometime in June, actually. Robert Kiyosaki made a tweet relating to the protests as a result of social unrest. And it was kind of a jarring tweet where he was calling the protesters losers and thugs or something like that. And because at the time I had started writing for the Grio, I wrote an open letter to Robert Kiyosaki.
Mm-hmm.
And I made some tweets relating to it, and it went viral. Boyce Watkins posted a screenshot of it. The article itself went viral because I had a link to the book embedded in the article. My book sales went crazy. Social media went crazy. I really learned the power of community in social media in that instance of time. That really just kind of launched a lot of success with my book. Media Takeout posted my tweet. So when we talk about traditional television, I guess like the news or somebody's talk show, no, but I got a lot of eyes on Rahkim Sabree, and it set me up to continue to do the things that I'm doing now. So
And
I'm still working on it though.
so what was the duration between when the book came out and that viralness happening for you? Like, what was that
Oh,
between the two?
so I published my book December 2nd or 3rd of 2019, and this is happening in June. So
Oh,
6 months,
okay.
6 or 7 months. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So what do you have going on now? What do you got going on now from a personal finance perspective? Like, what would you, if, when you think about the things that you do, what would you want people to know about what you're doing and how they can get involved with what you're doing?
Uh, I think right now, because of the pandemic, it's so important for people to realize the value in generating multiple streams of income.
Mm,
That has certainly been a big learning for me. And really honing a new skill set, right? Like I wrote 2 books, so I know that I could write, but I didn't know that I could write and get paid for it.
mm-hmm.
So, doing some freelance work around writing was another way for me to kind of augment my income. I was fortunate to work through the pandemic. There was never a time that I was, laid off or I wasn't getting paid. So I still had, I guess, the illusion of security, right? But I was just constantly worried what could happen and what would happen. And so that became very much a focus point for me. Like, okay, let me get these residuals. And I seen you posted something about it recently, with the books and the volumes, how they changed from month to month. And so that was a reality for me.
Yeah.
But then building relationships became very important, and just kind of understand the power of networking and how that can impact success or failure in your business.
Yes.
I tweeted something of no consequence, right? Like I didn't think that anybody was going to see it, and somebody with a large following retweeted it, and then so many other people retweeted it, and I was just like, wow. And then it became viral, and it was just based off of the fact that we had connected. They followed me, they saw the tweet, they retweeted it. But outside of that, I've been focusing on maintaining good credit standing. In fact, I've been focusing really on paying down debt aggressively. So I've acquired some debt. I have a really good utilization, but I also have some debt that needs to get taken care of. And I'm anticipating opportunities, investment opportunities with the close of this year going into and throughout next year that may rely on credit and what my debt to income ratio looks like. So I want to be positioned nicely to be able to take advantage of any opportunity that comes up that way, specifically with real estate in mind. Coaching, formalizing coaching and getting into creating programs, that has been a big focus of mine.
What
What
about
else?
collaborations?
Collaboration's huge. I can't tell you the number of podcasts and interviews that I've done, and looking for those opportunities. And it doesn't necessarily have to be through podcasting either. There's other ways to collaborate, and I find that even if it's not for right now, like if you're setting up the alley for a later time, like I said, those relationships are so important. So if I see somebody, or if I see an opportunity that somebody that I am connected to can take advantage of, that can further their business, and I make them aware of that opportunity, or I make the connection, then it's like, all right, cool. Like I got brownie points with this person.
Yes.
They got, a benefit. They're going to think of me when, that opportunity comes up. And so collaboration is huge. I think people go into it a lot of times with the expectation of an immediate return on their investment, or they're looking for something out of it, where sometimes just doing it for the sake of doing it is setting up your karma, if you call it that, for later on. So yeah, I'm huge with collaborations. Anytime, any way, anywhere that I can help add value to somebody else or their business, I will. But obviously within reason, right? Like you have to have time to rest.
Yeah.
I think right now I'm in a burnout period. Like I was just cranking out articles left and right and doing this and doing that and doing this. And now I'm just tired. So now I've been taking, my dad says to me all the time, he's like, you gotta be good to you. You gotta be good to you. And I was like,
Self-care,
now it's
self-care.
seriously.
Yeah, I'm telling you, seriously. I have learned that probably since the pandemic. I think that actually made a lot of us say, you know what, we can't go anywhere. And then you found yourself, I actually, for the right at the beginning, I was doing more work because I was afraid that, okay, now that my in-person thing stopped, what's going to happen to the business? So I'm trying to secure all the deals where I can do them virtually. Then I'm like, hold up, just because I'm home, I can't go back to back to back to back. I still have to have something in between. I got to be able to go downstairs and get something to drink. So I literally was scheduling them back to back. And so anyway, I think balance, I think self-care is important. So I know those that are listening, they've heard a lot about Financially Irresponsible. They heard about your story. They heard about the various things, the reason why you got into personal finance and the banking background that you have. So if they had to walk away with 3 tips on how to be financially responsible, what would those be? And this is personal. But maybe let's do it from 2 perspectives, from a personal finance perspective, and for those that are, entrepreneurs as well, because I know you're both.
Yeah, so I think number 1 for both audiences would definitely be to take inventory of where you are. My number 2 would be pay yourself first. I know that that's a big thing for you. And that would normally be my number one, but I find that, especially speaking to both audiences, entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs especially, and individuals who are looking to improve their personal finances, that the first step is figuring out like where you are, and getting under the rug and figuring out how bad is it, because only when you figure out how bad it is can you create a plan to get out of that. And I think a lot of people just kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and they'll just ignore it. So figure out where you are. Again, number two would definitely be pay yourself first. And that looks different in the different environments. As an entrepreneur, paying yourself first might look like reinvesting your profits, right? Like continue to build your business. But as an individual in personal finance, pay yourself first is what it says, what it says. Make it a priority to take a portion of whatever your income is and put it away for you. I think a lot of people now are, and I guess this will lead into my number three. A lot of people now are discovering their thirst for knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to jump on every wave that pops up. And so I think education is key, would be my number three as an entrepreneur and as somebody in personal finance. Quick story, my grandmother calls me last week, extremely excited because a bishop in her church was giving out stock picks through his premonitions, right? And I'm sitting there, and I hope she doesn't watch this, but she might, and whatever.
No, I want her to watch this. I want everybody to watch this.
I don't want her to feel like I'm picking on her, but it was such a teachable moment for me because she's like, her bishop is having premonitions about stock picks, and she's like, the stocks that he's telling people to buy are, the Apples and the Teslas and the Snapchats and the Microsofts. And she's like, you really need to get invested in Apple. And I was like, Nana, I've been investing in Apple since, 2016, right? Like I've gone through their splits and stuff. I have a ton of Apple stock.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that it was dangerous of him to be giving out this advice, and people are taking his advice without the education around what it really means to invest in the stock market. And she was telling me about the platforms that they were using to invest, and talking about like the cash apps and the phone apps. And I'm just like, okay, so Cash App allows for you to purchase fractional shares, which is great. People are out here buying little pieces of Tesla, buying pieces of Apple, buying pieces of Snapchat, and they think that they're investing, and they are. I won't discount that, but they're not buying whole stock.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, you have to be careful, because understand that the stock market is a long game. It's not something that, you get in, you get up and you try to time, because you'll always lose if you try to time it. And like I said, I think it's irresponsible for him to be giving stock picks on stocks that we know. I mean, anybody that knows Apple's performing. Like, yeah, buy Apple when it's up, buy Apple when it's down. Like, Apple's performing.
Well, let me ask you about that. Did you find that because as I'm listening, so I don't know if you did. If you didn't, give me the number. No, I was gonna say, did you use that, find that as an opportunity? Like, let me get with him and let me see if I can come in and give the education around whatever it is that he was sharing with that group. Did you do? Is that where you were going, or if you didn't go there, are you considering going there? Meaning to the place of, let me connect with him. I heard what he did. I guess you don't want to say he didn't do the right thing, but the other piece needs to be added, and I could be that resource.
I didn't. I am very, what's the word? Cautious when it comes to giving advice relating to the stock market. Because I still, in my day job, I work in personal finance. And so I definitely would not want there to be a perceived conflict of interest there. But also, I'm not licensed. I can't give that advice. I mean, I can certainly tell people what it is that I invest in and why it is that I invest in it. And Apple is, if there's one company that I'm invested in, is Apple. And I'm more than just their stocks. I have Apple everything. I have the AirPods, I have the iPad, I have the laptop, I have the phones. I'm Appled out. But I'm very aggressive on my holdings with Apple. I think I own close to 500 shares of Apple, and I've been buying, like I said, since 2016. So I've seen the ups and the downs and the good and the bad, and the split was super exciting for me because I'm like, people are gonna buy and it's gonna drive the price up, and it did. But then the price went back down, and it's just like, the unseasoned investors are gonna freak out, and I'm just gonna sit there and hang out. Like, okay, Apple will do its thing like it always does. So,
Well, what about if you're not? Because I understand, and that's the place I'm into about not being licensed from an investment standpoint. What about connecting them to somebody that is? Because that information is going to continuously be shared, either if not directly, indirectly, like your grandma said to your nana said to you. Because that kind of stuff. Again, it's why we do what we do, because there's a lot of people, one, that don't have the information, and there's a lot of people that are getting pieces of information. I'm not going to say misinformed, pieces of information. So, that quote, in the quote being, when you make an observation, you have an obligation. So you observe that this is happening. So there's like, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'll say, let's just say the second part of that quote. I'll leave you there. I see your cheeks even red. I'll leave that right there. I'm not going to do that to you. So this is, I know so many people are listening to this and watching this, wondering, okay, maybe they haven't heard of you or Financially Irresponsible. Where can they find out more about you and share with them all of their various different publications for which you publish regular articles? I see them come across all the time. So let them know where they can find out more about you, and say your first and last name for them as well.
Yeah, it's actually the same place. So Rahkim Sabree, and my website is rahkimsabree.com. So that's spelled RAHKIMSABREE. And actually my name is unique enough that if you type it into Google, a lot of my stuff will come up as well. But all of my social media handles are Rahkim Sabree. So at Rahkim Sabree on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook.com/Rahkim Sabree, LinkedIn at Rahkim Sabree. I have a Pinterest account that I don't post to, but I mean, any social media that's out there that, my name is probably my name.
Okay. I remember when we first met, I had to ask you, I'm like, is it really that? Because I'm old school, I'm older than you. And I'm like, okay, that Rahkim is the Rahkim. That's the Rahkim.
Yeah.
Is that really how
you he's like my SEO competition, because like sometimes I'll type my name in and I'll see his stuff come up and I'm like, come on, like I have an H in mind.
Listen, that's the Rahkim I grew up with now.
Yeah.
So all of your information will be in the show notes. So those of you listening know that where you can find him and his books will be in the show notes. So Rahkim, it's been a pleasure. I know we got together by way of Facebook, and then you being in the Facebook group. Thank you for rocking with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do for the community and beyond. I appreciate you being on the show with me today. So those of you that are watching, thank you for watching another episode of It's My Money with Patrina, and those listening to the Money Exchange with Patrina Dixon. Appreciate you. And so you can get these episodes all the time, make sure you subscribe. And if you enjoy, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Hit that thumbs up button. And then if you enjoy it, also share it with a friend so more people can get this knowledge that we're dropping on finances. So with that being said, Rahkim, see you later.
Thank you.